Hello everyone, Flanagan the Red here. This is one of my first videos, and in it I'm just going to be providing some quick voiceover to some sketches I did of Ryuko Matoi, the main character from Kill la Kill. So here we go. The first thing I like to start with, that you'll see if I ever do any more of these videos, hopefully I will, but just make a mark, like literally any mark. I used to do this with physical mediums as well, so in digital it's more symbolic, but I think it still helps to get in the right headspace for drawing. As artists, we sometimes get hung up on trying to make it perfect, but it will never be perfect. So just get the mistakes onto the page right now from the beginning. That kind of helps loosen me up and just sort of get me ready to, start failing until it looks right. Failure will be kind of a recurring theme. But also, digitally, this is a chance to test your brushes, which, okay, that's helpful. I'll probably talk about this a little bit more later, but you might notice I'm just using the regular default round brush. A little bit of opacity and size linked to my pen pressure, and that's it. And we're just gonna go. So yeah, just get lines on the paper, so to speak. At this stage, I'm not really trying to make anything look right. I'm just trying to map out a simplified representation of what I have in my head. So I start very vague, focusing more on visual proportions and positions than any actual anatomy. Don't get bogged down in details. It's way too early for that. So once I'm good with sort of the overall shape of things, then I start making more specific lines. And, well, for pinups, I pay close attention to how her goodies are displayed, so those decisions come first and everything else needs to follow. So, if I want a particular pose to show off her boobs, well, the rest of her body needs to move to account for that. Then some of the last things I do are the details that are going to make her recognizable, like her hair, her eyes, etc. Of course, I'll probably break that rule later in the video. So here's a common trick that I use a lot. Maybe you've already seen it if you've watched any other streams or drawing tutorials. As you work, you sort of get used to what you're looking at, and even a pose that's wrong starts to look right because your brain just sort of accepts it. So by mirroring your drawing, it sort of forces your brain to reload what it's seeing and can help you spot errors that you've missed before. So I use that very frequently, and it's surprisingly helpful. Also, notice I use the lasso and transform tools all the time, just to cut things out, stretch, skew, reorient them, do whatever you gotta do to kind of force things into the right position. Don't be afraid to completely destroy your drawing. It's just a sketch, right? So just do what you gotta do to get it, closer to where it needs to be. Of course, in looking at this video and writing this voiceover, looking back at this first sketch, I feel like it was kind of decent in the beginning, and then I just made it progressively worse. So this happens sometimes. I see that as a good sign it's time to start over, try the next thing, which is actually, if you haven't done this already, if you are an artist, I highly encourage you to try recording your own drawings. Even if you don't intend to post them online, looking back at them is an excellent way to learn more about your own process and where you can improve. I say this because in watching this video, I see myself breaking my own rules all the time. In this sketch in particular, I caught myself getting caught on details way too early. I mean, look, I had to go in and draw her heels before figuring out what's actually going on with her head, and her arms are still just sticks, so lesson learned right there. I moved on because while I liked the idea of this pose, for now I'm having trouble getting it down. It's okay to move on. It's a tough lesson to learn, one I'm still learning myself, that you need to give yourself permission to fail and try the next thing. If you really want to, you can always come back and try again, but 9 times out of 10, I find I'm happier with the next thing. That last sketch got a little philosophical. Let's talk about this one. Speaking of failure, I was kind of unsatisfied with how this one went. I was going for kind of a leaned back, foreshortened pose with the camera way down low, while also going for like a high fashion / Aeon flux sort of proportion style. Generally not great at super stylized proportions, but that was all the more reason I wanted to try it out, because it's good to try that kind of thing every now and then. Just break out of your comfort zone, try something new, try something different. I find that whenever I do that, even if it doesn't really turn out the way I want it to, it helps me learn more about how I normally draw. Kind of gives me a new perspective of, like, maybe that this whole drawing isn't really that useful, but little bits and pieces I can incorporate into other drawings. So, like I said, this whole time I'm just using the same basic brush to do everything with, the pen and the eraser tool. I try not to get caught up in finding the right brushes and stuff like that. Good brushes are good for the final product, but for just getting your idea out and practicing, the most important thing is to just sit down and do it. Try until you fail, and try again. Looks like I got philosophical again. Sketch number 4 is a reminder to mention that all of these were drawn from off-screen photo references. I rarely draw without any reference. Even if it's not exactly what I have in mind, it helps to look at a real person to keep things believable. Something else I do, but is extra noticeable in this one, specifically for breasts, I try not to draw them immediately. This whole time I've just been working with her chest in sort of a ribcage form. You might see me loosely gesture them in early just to know where I want them to go, but I try to get the ribcage more solidified before getting serious about drawing them in. The same is true with other, what we call landmarks, like the belly button. Nipples and belly buttons are extremely important in illustrating the orientation of a body. For example, drawing the belly button so close to the edge of the belly informs the viewer that she's turned away from the camera, almost perpendicular. It's easy to get excited to draw them because they're supposed to be there and they're fun to draw, but it's important to be mindful of their position and the effect they can have on perspective. Something else I try to be extremely mindful of is the idea of uninterrupted lines. You might notice I drew her arm behind her hip and thigh. The photo actually shows the opposite, but for a pinup and for my personal tastes, I like to see those curves uninterrupted to really show off her body as much as possible. It's kind of the point of a pinup, right? So I use some artistic license to slightly alter the pose to my liking. Photo reference is important, but it's my job as an artist to determine what's going to look best. And of course, this happens to me all the time. The sketch I do last is the one I'm happiest with. That's a really good lesson in why it's so important to A, warm up a bit before drawing, before something is considered final. B, sketch out a few possible ideas before committing to one. Give yourself some options at least. And C, keep trying. The more we try, the better chance we have of coming up with something better. So there we have it. These 4 sketches were done in about an hour and a half, so that's a little more than 20 minutes each. Spent about the same amount of time on each one, so I did end up going with number 4, which I'll leave a link to the finished version in the description. And if you're interested, I've got high-res versions, the source file, and other stuff available on my Patreon. So if you want to see more like that or more videos like this, please check it out. And thanks for watching.